And post the link in the Facebook chat as well. We'll probably get one of the guys at least watching to give us feedback.
Well, apparently we are in excellent condition.
Oh, very
Going
good.
to YouTube. Wait, can I get a link from here? Matt, do you want to just see if you can find it on
Yep.
online through YouTube? See if it pops up, because that would be cool to see if it makes it onto the page.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's an easy way to grab it from this channel and thing.
Yes, and it actually popped up on the front this time. Talking late. Yep, got it. So let me just grab that. Yeah, YouTube, it did pop up automatically this time, which it didn't last time. So that's an improvement in and of itself, which is great. And
who is that? That looks like a bot.
What looks like a bot?
Oh, we got a message from Angelo Knight. It said vom.red.
Yeah, that's definitely a bot.
Didn't count as a viewer also. Wait.
Yeah. That sounds absolutely like a bot.
That's fine.
Are you going to be, so do you have a link for the videos?
This one?
Yeah, like what we did last time where the video that popped up, so that like we could pause it, do commentary on it. Are we doing that this time around?
Okay, all right.
Think you did through Watch Party?
Yeah. I don't know, I got the browser tab still open, so maybe you can just reuse that. I'll put it into the Zoom right now.
Cheers. Cool.
Although, to be honest, the videos I have aren't specifically on YouTube, so this might not actually be. Oh, this one is. The Anthony Albanese one is, so maybe I can just.
Okay. So I've got Watch Party there.
Right.
They need.
Isn't there like normally a view on YouTube on for these embeds? God damn it. Oh, okay. Yeah, did you make it into the watch party? I'm not seeing any people in there, including myself, actually.
It says yeah, it's basically the same thing that happened last week, where I think you do have to end up creating a new one from fresh.
God damn it. That's really annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm in there, but yeah.
New room, let's go. All right, here. Matt, there's the new one.
All right, and it says 2 people in there. Apparently my name is Shabby because I haven't signed in. I'll have to set up an account for that later.
Very fitting of your character. Okay, so that's gone up. Okay, cool. So, okay, Matt, I want you to scat some music for about 10 seconds for the intro. While we just have the splash screen on.
Some music. So do. I gave my lover a chicken that had no bones. I don't know what to do
Matt,
here. I'm
quiet.
not a singer.
Matt, god damn it, you blew the window already. Anyway, okay, look. Welcome everyone to the Modern Meltdown episode 1 of the revival show that we're doing. Upgrading the podcast to a live stream, so if you can watch that if you want to on YouTube. We haven't figured out a regular schedule, but that'll be in the works. But for now, this is a rebranding of the Modern Meltdown. It is no longer like a pop culture podcast because we kind of, I think, outgrew that a little bit. and I think this is probably more important to speak about, right, Matthew? And I should say Matthew is joining me as one of the OG hosts. So introduce yourself, Matt, if you would.
Yes. So my name is Matthew Soul, and Modern Meltdown is something that's been in and out of my life constantly. So yeah, this is, I guess, version 3.0. When we did version 1, like Tommy said, pop culture. Version 2, we're getting closer to political, and now we're fully political. So my name's Matthew Soul. I am the co-host of the Weird Crap in Australia podcast. And why that helps me talk politics a little bit is because it's forced myself and my co-host Holly Soul to become social historians. So I can at least bring some historical background to some of the political chat we're going to have today. But thank you for joining us, and how you doing?
I don't think we
That's
have
my
enough
intro.
viewers to actually get a response, but that's fine.
No,
Let's assume everyone's doing just dandy.
absolutely.
So I think for now, what the how the show is going to work is basically just on Saturdays we will just take a look back at the week and talk about the most inflammatory stuff. I guess the biggest news, and basically put our spin on things, because I think there is a sentiment within like mainstream media and various other people that they don't quite get the narrative right.
Absolutely.
And against, especially with your experience with Weird Crap in Australia, there is a certain level of insight that you will have, and I think both of us are unique in terms of our analysis on these kinds of things. So just to start off with, hello there. This is just the camera for me. Hello. I want to talk about something very aggravating that I found with part of the left recently, and that's the Labour Party and this religious discrimination bill that just got passed in Parliament. Now, it's a shit bill. It's a dog shit bill that the Liberal Party basically wrote to allow certain religious groups, or I guess just religious groups in general or whatever, to have more power to discriminate against other people. They won't tell you that that's the reason they wrote the bill, but essentially the way the legislation is written, it does give them an outsized control. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the complaints that I've been seeing a lot, and this is coming from various people around me, is an attack on Labour for almost unconditionally supporting the bill because of the religious discrimination aspect, but also the fact that very recently, like, a lot of trans kids were getting like kicked out of schools and stuff like that because they don't ascribe to religious fundamentalism, essentially.
Yeah, recently there was a Brisbane school which what they were trying to do was have essentially all their the parents that represented their student body sign a document that basically said, you know, if your child decides that they're in the incorrect gender, then they will be expelled from the school, because basically the fundamentalist view is that the Bible says that the body you're born in is the body that you have, and anyone who doesn't ascribe to that in this particular religious school, and I'll point out that it was one, so we can't paint every religious school with the same brush. But in this particular instance, yes, they suggested if a child decides that, well, if a child comes into the knowledge that they are transgendered, that they'll be expelled from the school. And thankfully, a lot of people rallied against that, and the principal was actually fired from that school. But that's why, yeah, people have been discussing it.
Yeah, sorry for the technical glitch, everyone. I forgot to turn off the little auto logo playing thing. So anyway, so what really got my goat about all of this going on is basically the attacks on the Labour Party, which I don't think are very justified in this circumstance. Because basically, the people who object to the bill basically say that it's bad for trans people, it's bad for other minority groups that would be discriminated against by religious people, and that Labour principally shouldn't be supporting it.
Yeah, it could also be quite bad for people who are in working in situations where they're working with people who are of various religious fundamentalists or, religious extremists, You may not be able to say to someone, hey, I'm an atheist, I don't particularly like you telling me I'm going to hell. And the liberal bill that they were trying to push through would have essentially given protections to the individual to continue to harass and bully their co-workers who didn't fall into their own religious category.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my take on all of that, and I just want to focus on the attacks on Labor specifically, and why they're unwarranted. Because basically this happens a lot in the mainstream sort of narrative where Labor will just get attacked for everything, even though again it's the Liberal Party that wrote this fucking shit bill, and all of the things that we would want to guard against as progressives, Labor and the crossbench wrote amendments for. And not only that, they managed to actually push through one amendment that protected trans people specifically. And so this line that like Labor should have just opposed the bill to start with because they shouldn't play with the lives of trans kids, I think is a little bit disingenuous given the result of what happened. Now, what happened was, the amendments came through and they managed to get a whole bunch of Liberal Party people to actually cross the floor, vote against their own government, and side with Labor on that specific amendment about trans kids. And the thing about that is that if Labor had just not supported the bill, these conservative politicians, these Liberal Party members, would not have had the cover. Well, they would have had cover to not force them to go and like do all these speeches, carry the wave the flag, the rainbow flag. And so coming out of this, because Labor just said, yeah, we're going to support the bill, all these politicians were naked and they had to make a moral decision to do something outside of the government line. And by doing so, we got all this publicity and all of their speeches became very public, and it would seem like the support for trans people, especially since these are coming from liberal politicians, is probably stronger than we actually think it is, given how right-wing our media generally is. Right? And so not only that, because of that amendment got through, there's a lot of people who on the even more conservative side of the Liberal Party who are just like, nah, fuck the bill, but just burn it to the ground. We don't actually want it anymore. Just because of that one amendment that protected trans kids specifically, which goes to show, which reveals their agenda, which was basically just to allow the religious people to discriminate against other minorities for whatever reason they felt justified. So I think we have 4 things that Labor achieved using this tactic of just agreeing to this bill. One of them is that they avoided a culture war issue. So for me, this bill was basically designed to cause either infighting within the Labor Party, to sow division if there was one, but that you remain united through that. But it was also designed, like, because it's very close to an election, to inflame a sort of like, oh yeah, because Labor principally opposes this bill, they oppose, or they are for people discriminating against religion, which is a very good attack line. It's very snappy, and you can easily throw that at Labor for this kind of thing to just rouse up a cultural war issue.
To back up your statement there a little bit more, Tommy, so this quote I'm about to read here, it comes from The Guardian, which is probably you would say, probably the most socially progressive media outfit we have in the country at the moment. Would that be pretty fair to say?
Of the big ones, I guess. Like, I would still say that the ABC is.
Depends on who their editor is at the time.
Just because The Guardian is still like a private sort of institution, they're still neoliberal.
Yep.
But,
so I just want to read this paragraph here just to further illustrate Tommy's point. In caucus, the shadow cabinet, including Chris Bowen and MPs Julian Hill and Stephen Jones, spoke in favour of passing the bill in the House, expressing concerns that voting the bill down would give Scott Morrison a political wedge to campaign on, and that hastening the bill to the Senate could speed up amendments to improve protections, which is exactly what Tommy's saying.
Yeah, so I will back that up with another thing. If I can... Well, why is that thing not a thing? Okay, so I'm going to play this video from Anthony Albanese. He said this like straight after the press conference. I think he said it around here.
They are. And Labor will continue to argue for additional amendments in the Senate if the legislation gets there. But I say this about this Prime Minister. The Prime Minister tried to wedge Labor and ended up wedging himself. He could have had constructive dialogue and dealt with the provisions consistent with what he himself had argued.
Okay, now the rest of it isn't all that relevant, but I think that wedge thing is very important because he specifically called out the Prime Minister on that it was a wedge. So it seems like this bill is very tactical and not like a thing that anyone really cares about bringing forward.
Mm.
And so, they avoided that. They ended up exposing the trans plight to many people, and they caused division among the Liberal Party, which is good because they're our enemies in this fight for progressivism, and it makes them look weak. Okay. And fourth, the bill is essentially dead because of that amendment getting through. And so even though ideologically people might be opposed to Labor's sort of optics, I think you have to respect the fact that they recognize that they're playing a game. And when they state clearly that, yeah, Morrison tried to make a wedge, they're saying that Morrison is also playing the game and we're just reacting to his moves, and we countered it, I think, perfectly because they achieved all this extra stuff that wouldn't have happened if they just blanket opposed the bill, which people who are ideologically in favor of Labor seem to be attacking them on, which I completely disagree with.
I think that the reason that people are having such an adverse reaction is that for whatever reason in this country, we've had a resurgence of fundamentalist evangelical interference in our politics. And, you see it all the time when, like the protesters who were in Canberra last week, those protesters were carrying a lot of religious iconography. I don't need the vaccine, God is my vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. The LGBTI community, I feel are in some cases reactionary, and I can fall into this myself. But I would say that the reason they're so reactionary is because they've been fighting for such a long time that, immediately when things like this pop up, they start to get concerned, and maybe it's a case of thinking more emotionally than logically, which as this show will progress, I'm the emotional one, Tommy is the robotic one. So you're probably going to get more logic out of him than me. But I can understand the fear from the LGBT community. And there is also a present evangelical movement within the Labor Party that is also backed essentially by some working unions in this country. And so people are skeptical of Labor. But the point you're raising, and I think it's an extremely valid point, is that when it comes to our media landscape right now, there are conservative elements embedded into media that appears to be progressive. Fairfax Media, whom I used to work for, has a lot of conservative elements within it. And Tommy used the term neoliberal, and he's not incorrect in suggesting that a lot of media that pretends to be progressive or liberal is in fact neoliberal, which is exactly what we don't want. Those media organizations will attack Labor because they also have a vested financial interest in the Liberal Party getting another term. So that's how I could break down that two issue. I think when it comes to the LGBT community, they're scared and they have every right to be scared. I think that is absolutely fair for them. And if some of their voting bloc decides that any support, whether a tactical maneuver or not, is going to have them reconsider their vote when it comes to the next election, That is also some of the fallout that Labor does have to, it's an unintended consequence of their actions that will have to be reckoned with as well. What was also interesting about this move, Tommy, and I'll hand it back to you to speak about this a bit more, is it actually forced a few Liberal senators to vote with their conscience. They actually crossed the bench.
Yeah. And like I said, like that was a very good optics win for progressives, and also a move that made the Liberal Party look weak, which I think benefits us tremendously. But the speeches like were very human, right? Like they spoke about like very specific issues that these people went through with their own children and stuff like that. And so again, like the visibility of the plight of trans people has gotten a boost. And again, like I don't think this would have happened if Labor had just opposed the bill from the start. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say about that. It's like we get caught up in ideology a lot, and there can be dogmatism on the left. I think most people think of leftism as like more research and all that other kind of stuff, but there is a similar level of dogmatism, except it's not against the other group, it's against ourselves, other people within our movement. And I think in a lot of these instances, especially when you look at the Labor Party in this country, a lot of what we are influenced by is the media institutions, and even the impartialness of something like the ABC can color how we perceive the Labor Party. So there's a lot of stuff going on that frames them as the same as the Liberal Party, because there's really the two blocks, Labor and Liberal. And so when you have that kind of environment and people just talk impartially, Labor can get lumped in to the kind of bad shit that happens by the Liberal Party, even though like demonstrably and in terms of the pure ideology, Labor is different on almost every level.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that people do forget about the Labor Party as well is the Labor Party was born out of the Eureka Stockade. Basically was the first organized labor movement in this country. Now, the Eureka flag has been co-opted by white supremacy groups, but if you listen to my episode on the Eureka Stockade with the Weird Crap in Australia podcast, little plug there, you'll discover that is essentially where the Labor Party was born out of. And the reason it's called the Labor Party was because it was built by laborers. Now, for the most part, the Labor Party has been ultimately a workers' rights party, and then over time has also evolved to incorporate progressive issues. And the reason it incorporates progressive issues is because if you're representing the workforce, which crazy fact here that I'm going to throw out there, but there are more wage slaves than there are millionaires and business owners, which is a crazy concept. I know it's very insane to say that. And so because the Labor Party represents the interests of the working class, they are by default going to have to be more progressive than the Liberal Party, just because of who they're representing. Because if you look at the working class, they're the ones who make up a larger population group, basically, right? Which means that progressivism is going to have to be part of it. One of Labor's problems as well can sometimes be messaging. So I just want to bring up this statement quickly. This came from Shadow Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, who said, Labor supports the extension of the federal anti-discrimination framework to ensure that Australians are not discriminated against because of their religious beliefs or activities. Dreyfus said the bill had some big flaws that Labor will seek to change through amendments in Parliament and if we are unsuccessful in government. Dreyfus said, and this is where their messaging gets conflicted. Dreyfus said Labor also supported removing discrimination against teachers while recognizing the right of religious schools to give preference to hiring school staff of their own faith. So that sort of messaging is very murky and it's very hard to understand. It almost seems like those 2 points are counter. And I think that has helped to create a murkiness, which has put some people on the left side of politics on the back foot when you are having to deal with that sort of murky messaging. Because for me to translate it, it seems like, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
If a school has the right to be able to fire someone based on their gender identity, their sexuality, or their religion, but we're also going to be protecting those people, it comes across as a counter message. So what the Labor Party could do to maybe soften the blow next time, or at least keep more people on side, is just make sure that when they front the media, that they do have clear, concise messaging. Because when I read that, that is an appeal to everyone statement, and an appeal to everyone statement can often find itself in murky territory.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's just them playing into the current strategy, which is basically just to be as controversial as possible, and just to let the Liberal Party hang themselves. And I think in that respect, yeah, sure, that was probably a mess up given what has transpired, but that statement I don't think is doing many of the rounds on like news media and things like that. So it's probably fine. Because
Well,
overall, it's yeah.
And another thing to back you up here as well, Tommy. Here are two very, very different groups. They both released statements. So the LGBTQ plus lobby, Equality Australia, rather, said the Labor amendments won't fix everything, but amending the statements of belief clause would ensure existing protections for LGBTIQ plus people, women, and people with disability are not undermined. So they believe that Labor did the right thing. And then a group that you would believe is diametrically opposed also said the National Catholic Education Commission praised Labor for accepting the right of religious schools to give preference to hiring school staff of their own faith. So what Tommy has said in the fact that they destroyed the bill while also preventing it from becoming a culture war issue during our election season as it starts to heat up. Thankfully, not like an American one would, where it goes for years, what feels like years and years and years. Ours will go. Ending. Yeah, ours is essentially, we're in soft campaign mode now. We're going to have a solid 6 weeks. And then thankfully it's all said and done. But those two statements prove Tommy's point correct, that what Labor has done has prevented this becoming a culture war issue, which is one of the only weapons that the right seems to manage quite efficiently. So in that respect, and look, I'm happy to admit this. I was wrong about this issue initially when I read about it. I think a lot of people were, and I think a lot of people were wrong about it for the simple fact that we're so tired of fighting the fight that anything looks like red to a bull at this point. And so,
yeah, there's one of the YouTubers who do the series called the Alt-Right Playbook. He said that the left are acclimated to being burned. Like we're just very used to our public figures disappointing us in some way. We just see it everywhere. So I think we're hypersensitive to that kind of thing. And so it's I'm not surprised that it happened. It just annoys me in this instance because of how much good came out of the tactic that was used.
That's all. And I think what you brought up earlier as well about the media landscape at the moment, if there was, it's quite evident that a lot of media in this country has either been infiltrated or bought and sold by a conservative element that has a vested interest in keeping conservatives in power. And what's been so interesting about that as well is that if you applied the same scrutiny that's applied to the Labor Party, to the Liberal Party, and all media organizations, I think you'd have a lot more people scratching their heads about who to vote for in the future, because people just are not getting the information that big media is meant to be providing. And that's why the best idea for anyone trying to navigate this landscape is, read a Murdoch Press publication, read a Fairfax publication, read an ABC publication, read The Guardian, try and find some independence out there as well. Crikey, although they are a paid service, is also not a bad news source. And part of being a citizen of this country and an active citizen means that you should be informed. You know, one of the worst comments, and you may have heard this in the past as well, Tommy, is when someone goes, "Oh, I don't care about politics." Everyone should care about politics. It affects your lives. And the easiest way to stay informed is to read a bunch of different news sources, understand where those news sources are coming from, understand the corporations behind them, and then you're going to be able to make effective decisions instead of having knee-jerk reactions like I am very susceptible to having as well. So I'm trying to do better, and if we all take on that idea, we'll all be better voters in the future. And being a better voter means that you're going to see policies in this country which directly benefit you.
Yeah. One thing I'll add on to that though is that it can be hard because like a lot of the people we need to vote on our side are like the working class and people who are struggling. And a lot of those are disengaged with politics because they literally do not have the privilege to be engaged. They're always just working all the time, and they have families and stuff like that, and so they can't actually devote much time to researching who the best candidate is that's in their electorate and all that other kind of shit. So it can be hard.
Absolutely.
But like I think we can talk about that closer to when the election is called. That kind of thing, and like who to vote for and all that other kind of stuff. But you wanted to talk about I think Mike Burgess, who is the Director General at ASIO, has something to say about politicians, but the Liberal Party being shitheads.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike Burgess is an interesting figure at the moment, and not generally someone that we would know about in the public forum. Mike Burgess is the Australian intelligence official and current Director General of Security in charge of the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, known as ASIO. And ASIO is a fun one for me because we talk about ASIO on the Weird Crap in Australia podcast all the time in the relation to their cover-up of the aliens. But we're not going to be talking about aliens today. What's happened for the first time in a really, really long time is that the Director General of ASIO has had to come out and say that international security issues and internal security issues should not be used as a political football, because Scott Morrison and the Liberal Party are pulling up a McCarthy era tactic of Reds under the bed. We're going in for another Red scare, and the director of ASIO has done something that's rather unprecedented in our times, which has actually come out and suggest that national security issues should not be a political football. And he's 100% right in saying that. And then, ironically, the response from the Liberal Party is, don't tell us what we can't talk about. There was one MP, Dave Sharma, who he went on record basically saying the same thing. That we should be allowed to debate whatever, and that Mike Burgess should take a step back. I think it's Burgess, Burgess. I'm very sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want, I can put up
Burgess.
it's gone. The video that because he actually went on 7:30 with
Yes, he did.
Lee Sale,
yeah,
I
which
think it is.
Yeah.
And I'd probably bring that up onto the watch party thing if you'd like.
Yeah, let's bring it up. Let's actually hear from the man himself, because it's extraordinarily rare to actually hear our top spy having a chat with the general public.
The Prime Minister has made an extraordinary accusation in question time, subsequently withdrawn, that the Deputy Labor leader Richard Marles is the Manchurian Candidate. The Manchurian Candidate's a famous book and film in which the son of a prominent political family is brainwashed into spreading communism.
Are you not able to see the thing, or are you commenting on the video?
No, I can see it. Have you hit the play? Again, episode 1, technical issues are going to happen.
Yeah, I pressed play. What happens if you press play?
Is the Defence Minister Peter Dutton calling Anthony Albanese
China's
preferred candidate for Prime Minister. It's all an example of the Liberal Party playing on what it perceives to be one of its strengths going into the federal election, national security. For a look at the key security challenges currently facing Australia.
Hold on. It said you started the video at 00000. I was at like 20 seconds in.
Oh wow. Well, you actually just managed to pause it then. So, yeah, I don't know why you weren't able to make that work, but it's working for you now. So, should be all
it's
good.
working, but like
forward.
I'm just wondering if we're watching the video at different timestamps. So.
Mine is sitting on 18 seconds.
All right, I'm going to go to 18 seconds and then play it.
Calling Anthony Albanese China's preferred candidate for Prime Minister. It's all an example of the Liberal Party playing on what it perceives to be one of its strengths going into the federal election, national security. For a look at the key security challenges currently facing Australia, I was joined earlier for an exclusive interview with the Director-General of ASIO, Mike Burgess. Mike Burgess, thanks for coming in.
It's great to be here, Lee.
How concerned are you about any kind of foreign interference in the Australian federal election?
Sure. So foreign interference, espionage and foreign interference, in fact, supplants now terrorism as our nation's principal security concern, and that's not to take away from the threat of terrorism. But in terms of foreign interference in the federal election, we don't believe that a foreign government could actually change the outcome of our election for a whole range of reasons. Our election process and our system of democracy is robust, so don't believe that can happen. Of course, we do see foreign interference attempts to influence candidates and influence members of parliament. We will continue to see those attempts and they will try, but I'm very confident with the actions of my agency and other actions that we take that election will not be interfered with. And of course, I'm very confident.
So this can almost be a Weird Crap in Australia episode, which is a lot of fun for me. Reason I paused it there is I just want to talk about election interference. Now, every single country on this planet interferes in elections, and they do it in very public ways, and they do it in very private ways. One of the ways that is currently happening, and I spoke about this in our Zero episode as we relaunching the Modern Meltdown, is that
you're not meant to talk about that one.
Oh, right. Sorry. In that non-practice thing that we did that didn't happen, I talked to you, Tommy, about how bots are quite easily infiltrating Facebook, and they come from two places, generally China and Russia. Russia is extraordinarily good at it, and you'll be able to see that as the events in the Ukraine unfold.
Jesus. It's part of one of the reasons I didn't manage to get to sleep today. I was meant to take a nap before this whole thing started because I've been up since like midnight, and now it's like noon, and it's just because okay, I'll have this stream on and then I'll just let it drift off to sleep. Let me tell you, it's hard to get 40 winks when there's all this talk about Ukraine being invaded. Okay, like it seems very imminent. Holy shit.
Yeah, and that's actually something I've been reading about just recently, and I know this is going to sound incredibly counterintuitive, but because what you're suffering from there essentially, Tommy, is doom anxiety. You know, you're plugged into the news. We have to, at some point during our week, I'm not saying don't be informed, but people also need to start being able to go, I can be okay with not knowing what the news is for a day.
Yeah,
and
you need to sleep. You need to sleep.
You need to sleep.
Sleep, drink your water. Good for you.
Exactly right. 100%. So don't feel bad if you decide to unplug for a day or two. For you, me personally, my weekends are my weekends, and I try and unplug from the news. But yeah, getting back to what I was saying there, Russia and China are very good now at infiltrating our social media. And we are incredibly susceptible to it because we still don't have social media education in this country, which needs to start in primary schools and go into high schools so that people are aware of how they can be manipulated via social media. So when our ASIO chief says that that is now our top concern in this country, he's absolutely right. And that's what he's talking about. So we also interfere with elections. What we'll do is we'll identify candidates in other countries, especially in our local region, and we will, in some cases, provide financial aid to a government that we want to see stay in power, or we'll provide financial aid to a government that we want to see in power. The Americans are very, very, very good at this. You can go check out their track record, but we do it. Every other country does it, and it just depends on you know, whether you're doing it for good, sometimes Australia will try and prop up a government because, you know, they've got good healthcare, good education for their people, and it stops terrorism. It stops people being radicalized, because generally it's harder to radicalize someone if their life is good. And so we will make sure to, you know, support anyone in that endeavor to protect their own shores. So that's how we do it. And then other countries will manipulate voters through social media. And then in the case of America, they will sometimes come in and destabilize an entire region and instill a puppet dictator. You can check out the whole Iran thing if you want more info on that. But that is essentially what he's talking about there.
The vast majority of politicians that we deal with are actually thoroughly resistant to that type of foreign interference.
What countries are wanting to try to infiltrate the Australian political process?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that it's more than one country, so there are multiple attempts at foreign interference and espionage in this country.
You've said on the record that you don't want to name the countries that are involved, but you've also said that you want ASIO to be more transparent. People just assume that it's China. Why can't you be more direct about naming countries?
Well, one, I don't think it's my job to actually call out a particular country. I'll leave that to governments. My job and the job of my organisation is to identify these threats and help deal with them.
How many professional spies do you think are active in Australia?
Oh, again, we don't give numbers, but again, multiple countries are attempting this. A recent activity that we took in the last 2 years, we discovered a nest of spies. We understood what they were up to. They were looking to monitor.
Yeah, nest is it's a very interesting term. Yeah, nest is a very interesting term. Yeah, look, you know, spycraft is a part of every single country out there, and you know, it's not. He's very correct here in, like, Lee Sales is asking the question. Just say it's China. You know, basically that was the prompt there. Just, you know, we know it's China. Yeah, China plays a massive role in Australia. Like, our close proximity means that there's going to be a lot of spycraft between both our countries. Like,
Yeah, but
we
it's also
have
like
spies.
we have an outsized influence on, like, I guess, China. So naturally they would target us a lot. Just
Yeah,
because, like, if
absolutely.
they can influence us, they can get more out of us and to serve their political interests.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. And that is one of the main players here. But another player is Russia, and they have been for a substantial amount of time. Another player, especially during the Trump era, was America. We had, you know, there's a lot of spycraft that happens between Australia and America as well. We make up part of the Five Eyes security spy network across the world, which is New Zealand, Australia, the UK, America, and Canada. And yeah, you know, it's just sort of a natural part of doing business. So again, I really have to sort of give some respect here to our spy chief. He knows exactly the message he's trying to get across, and he's smart enough not to sort of get thrown into an angle that's going to be easily reprinted. But yeah, Nest of Spies is a good one. I like that. It's scary. It's like James Bond.
The diaspora community, they were looking to steal defence technologies. They were looking to get access to police records to follow up on people. They were trying to get access to security protocols at a major international airport. We found them. We've quietly removed them. The harm has been reduced. The individuals that might have been doing the wrong thing have all found their path to not doing that anymore.
I wonder what that means. These individuals somehow haven't found the path anymore. They probably got killed or some shit. Like, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's wow. I did not expect this interview to take that turn. That was interesting.
I mean, you know, again, it's all vagaries, and that's what spy agencies like. One of the things about the intelligence community is what they say is also a weapon. You know, it's also a tool in their fight, and our interpretation of what they say could also be benefiting them in a way. You know, he could be saying, look, you know, when he says that it was reduced and those people were removed, that could be signaling to the offending country, hey, you know, we've caught you, and if you've lost contact with your people, this is why. It could also mean that they were just simply put back on a boat, said, "Hey, we got you, you're going home," and they could have had them deported as well.
Than that, but yeah, it could be.
It could, look, the National Spy Agency of every single country absolutely has, they have the right to circumvent the law when they deem fit in a lot of ways.
That's just one of many examples that we deal with every year.
The Prime Minister in Parliament this afternoon has referred to the Deputy Labor leader as the Manchurian candidate, which he then withdrew. We've heard the Defence Minister Peter Dutton the other day claim that Anthony Albanese was China's preferred candidate. How concerned are you about politicians weaponising national security and intelligence in the lead up to the election?
So there's two things I'd say there. One, the foreign interference is against all members of Parliament, so it doesn't go after one particular party or the other, so it's kind of equal opportunity in that regards. In terms of what politicians do, I won't comment on what politicians do, but let me take it back to what I really do care about. ASIO is apolitical. My staff are apolitical. They put their lives on the line to actually protect Australians and Australia from threats to security. The ASIO Act requires us to be apolitical. I take that very seriously.
Well, it can't make your job any easier when politicians do politicise it.
So I'll leave the politics to the politicians, but I'm very clear with everyone that I need to be, that that's not helpful for.
So when he turns around there and he said, you got to read between the lines here. He said that their organisation is apolitical. And what he is signalling there to our politicians on both sides is that ASIO is not a political football. So the reason I wanted to bring up this story is because it's quite odd for me to be seeing a tactic pulled straight out of the McCarthy era, the Reds under the bed scare. For people who aren't aware of it, there was a time where the word communist, which has now evolved into leftist, which is incorrect, and socialist, which is also incorrect. The term communist was used to destroy political adversaries, and it was introduced by a dude by the name of MacArthur, and you can go check this out. McCarthy. You can go check this out. In America, they basically had all of these hearings where people were dobbed in by their mates. They were dobbed in by their co-workers. Sometimes the FBI would coerce people into dobbing in people that weren't actually communist actors or communist spies. And those people would essentially have a trial by public, and then their lives were destroyed. This eventually morphed into the satanic panic as well. And right now, if you look at the anti-vaccination movement, we're in the middle of satanic panic 2.0. The important thing to understand here, and this is what Burgess has just said, interference happens in all political parties. It can happen at any time to anyone. It is not a partisan issue. There isn't a mass infiltration of the Labor Party in the same way that there is also not a mass infiltration of the Liberal Party, because both parties are equally susceptible to this. What can happen, like when he brought up the fact that they were going through police records, what they're trying to do there is they are attempting to find dirt on politicians so that they can bribe them. This is the reason that I am very concerned about this is our current field of politicians on both sides of politics can be extraordinarily weak when it comes to doing the right thing. We've seen in the past that politicians are willing to throw their own careers out the door in order to do the right thing. The example I would have for that is during the gun rights issues after the Port Arthur massacre. There were 3 Liberal sitting MPs who told John Howard, if you do this, if you bring in these regulations, we will lose the next election. And John Howard said to, and this is I'm trying to be to demonstrate here that there are good people on both sides when it does come to the Liberal and the Labor Party. at least back in the day and in the 90s, when those MPs told John Howard, if you bring in gun control to this country, we will lose our next elections. And he said, I need you to lose those elections. And they did. You know, they essentially threw themselves on the sword to make sure that Australia was a safer place going forward. So we don't have that honor anymore. We don't have that style of politician. It was nearly dead in the 90s, and it's certainly dead now. So that's what the ASIO security chief is talking about, how easily it is to dig up a bit of dirt on these people. And as we've seen, after scandal after scandal after scandal, especially when it comes to sitting Liberal members, that there is a lot of dirt to dig up. Those foreign actors will dig up that dirt, and then they will try and compromise that politician in order to swing favor towards, you know, their interests. You know, if it's China, they want Australia to have a more relaxed attitude when it comes to China. If it's Russia, they want a more relaxed attitude as the Ukrainian conflict increases. That's what it's all about. And it's important that these issues aren't politicized, because that means that keeping an eye on each other is going to become more and more difficult. But yeah, this Reds under the bed scare shit, it's a typical marketing technique, and we see it from one of the worst marketing guys ever, and that's Scott Morrison. Yeah,
I think it goes to show how
you recently said that the COVID-19
just very quickly goes to show like how desperate they are, because like what I said about the cultural war issues that the Liberal Party were trying to do to Labor before, they're basically trying to do the same thing now, right?
Absolutely.
Fabricating a thing to make it look like they would be better at handling a certain crisis than the Labor Party are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're using ASIO to do it. And then now the boss of ASIO has to come out and go, please stop doing that shit. It's not good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason it's not good, Tommy, is because it makes them less effective, honestly. Like, it will hamper them, and it will create this, you know, this Reds under the bed scare. And it's incorrect. It didn't work in the 60s. It doesn't need to work now. And it also does go to show that there may be a bit of a silver lining here, and that the Liberal Party do not believe that they're going to be winning the next election, because it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, they want to accuse Labor of being in bed with China. That's essentially what the messaging is here. It won't take long for the Labor Party then to be like, okay, well, if we get to bring up everyone's associations, that they could also go scorched earth, and it could be just as detrimental for the Liberal Party, especially because the Liberal Party has reeled from scandal after scandal after scandal. You know, Scott Morrison's run, and I can't believe I'm saying this, could be more detrimental to the branding of the Liberal Party than Tony Abbott was. And that's,
I mean, I think that's almost definite. Like, they still got elected after Tony Abbott, I guess. But like, especially abroad and within our institutions, it seems like what Morrison's doing now, like with the French submarine deal, for instance, and this, it seems like his credibility and the Liberal Party credibility has been shot. So, and what I love about this specific moment in time with this ASIO thing is that the ASIO boss came out and said this. Like, the Labor Party didn't have to defend their record. Someone else with an apolitical agenda has had to come out and go, no. So
exactly right. They've had to, basically tell the Liberal Party to pull their heads in. The Liberal Party is not going to do that. This is probably what they're going to be taking into the election. Is be
they're
careful.
Go the China scare in probably a different capacity. But
absolutely. I honestly, I don't think, especially after Dave Sharma's comments, which you can go check that out online as well. He said it publicly, made it a part of public record. I don't think they're going to drop it. I think they're going to push and push and push, because they've lost ground on so much already. The Australian labour force, which makes up the majority of the voters in this country, when I say labour, I mean working people, they're tired, they're disenfranchised, they're resigning in huge amounts of huge numbers, and with the issues that are important to them, not whether like a Chinese spy is hiding under your bed. The issues that are important to them is making sure they're going to be able to pay their mortgage payments, making sure that they're going to be able to feed their children and clothe their kids and get an education, or at least just, you know, have a little bit of money in their pocket to go to the cinema. That's what they're worried about. They're not worried about this shit. But this is the sort of the last tactic that the Liberal Party has. Now, on the same side of the argument, the Labor Party have done themselves no favors in the past. Everyone remembers that Bill Shorten was very, very slow to fire a sitting MP who had been absolutely compromised by China. And as I said, it happens on both sides of the political aisle. And people shouldn't think that it's just contained to Labor, even though the Liberal Party is trying to say that. But Bill Shorten, when he was leading the Labor Party, in my opinion, made a massive mistake by not taking action quickly, although it would have been detrimental to the party to have to go into a by-election. At the end of the day, removing that MP had to happen anyway. So that's the problem. Now, the fact that the one thing they keep bringing up, and especially the Conservatives have said, oh, well, here's Anthony Albanese speaking Mandarin. Oh, here's former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd speaking Mandarin. Yeah, they're speaking Mandarin because China is one of our largest trading partners. And I don't agree with the political system of China. I don't agree with the CPR. But at the end of the day, having diplomatic relations, means that, yeah, you should probably know a little bit of their language in order to speak with them and converse with them. And every single political party is going to appeal to every single financial backer. If you don't believe that the Liberal Party has members who know how to speak Mandarin and will appeal to financial interest groups in order to try and win elections, then you're fooling yourselves. Like both political parties do this. That's why it's an apolitical issue. And infiltration doesn't just happen by other countries. The Nationals Party a few years ago, and ASIO actually caught on to this, was completely infiltrated by a white supremacy movement. Right? Happens to everyone.
Yeah, that was that NRA thing, right?
Yeah. So what had happened is that there's a couple of white supremacy movements. One, I believe they call themselves the Guardians or the New Order. They're located in New South Wales. What they had done is they'd managed to become a political party member. It's quite easy. I'm a Reason Party member. I'm a non-financial Reason Party member because I don't have money, as do a lot of us. But what you do to become you sign up for your party. So let's say we're signing up for Labor. We decide to become a financial member. And then what you do is you're essentially donating money into their war chest when it comes to election time. It's one of the ways you can actually affect change is by providing money for advertising and things like that. What happened with the National Party is they had people become a white supremacy element, become financial members, and then they started contributing a substantial amount of money, which allowed them to essentially prop up their own candidates. And then ASIO discovered this plot, and the National Party was forced to essentially remove all of those that element from within their party. And that's what happened in that instance. So yeah, happens all the time. I don't really have much more to say on that, other than I applaud our spy chief for actually standing up and doing this. It takes courage to essentially bypass the political system and come out and say, this is not right and we need to stop it, in not so many words. And it's nice to know that there are still people with that sort of courage. Can you trust a spy organization? Probably not, due to the inherent nature of who and what they are. I don't like any organization that can sort of do whatever they want whenever they want. But yeah, however, I think he's done the right move. And I don't know whether the messaging will penetrate. I hope it does, because if the Liberal Party are now resorting to tactics from the 1960s, and as well, let's not forget, they're also trying to drum up xenophobic sentiment when it comes to this sort of thing.
True.
there's a massive Chinese population here in Australia. For the most part, they're just regular citizens, just like the rest of us, just trying to make a living. Just through our workplace, we've got a lot of good co-workers who come from China, who are lovely people. And this type of xenophobia is pretty typical of the Liberal Party as well. So, they're trying to appeal to racists, they're trying to scare people, and they're also trying to encourage those people that believe that leftism and socialism is akin to communism are the bad people. And in this case, anyone who's progressive now by conservative groups as seen as communists. So it's an interesting play, and I hope that the Australian people are smart enough to see through it. And Burgess has done a great job in trying to make sure that the Australian public does do that if they listen to him, and I hope they do.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. It's cool though that those two stories have kind of flowed into each other. I guess today's theme, with the episode's theme today, is messaging. That's
I mean, I think that's going to be
fighting
a
through.
theme throughout what is to come, right? Because in the election, we're probably going to be breaking that down a lot. And
that's all we're going to be doing.
Of this show, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like penetrating the spin. We've picked a really shit time to start a political YouTube stream because we're going to have to cover an election as novice. So we're going to fuck it up, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah, we started early. Like one of my goals for this year was to start this before the election so that we wouldn't be this green. Yep. We'd have some experience when the election actually calls, but like we'll get better at it. But it's important that we get some messaging out there, because it feels weird for me that like Friendly Geordies is literally like, well, maybe not literally, but one of the very few voices that is actually pointing out the narrative that's counter to what you see here. And I think his is probably a little bit more truthful. And I think us just being there and adding to it, even if we don't get as many viewers or whatever, is okay, as long as we are adding something to the discourse, even if it is basically almost piggybacking off him. I don't think our content is going to be the same, though. I think we're going to target a different niche, but yeah.
Yeah, there is a new generation emerging when it comes to the media landscape. It's a generation that is able to use technology to circumvent gatekeepers, because those gatekeepers are now being bought and paid for. And that's quite evident. And it's, although, for the most part, I agree with the Friendly Geordies line. I don't agree with everything they do, but he is 100% on point when he turns around and he says, we are on a low budget doing more than mainstream media is doing. And I think you're 100% right, Tommy, in the fact that citizen journalists can now also take up that struggle, can take up that fight, and try and penetrate through this mass media marketing spin. And we can beat those gatekeepers, and we can actually start taking them to account. I've worked within some of my work experience. I've worked with Fairfax. I was on the Fairfax floor when the advent of advertorial came into play. And I wrote some advertorial. I wrote that.
Did it make you feel dirty? Did it make you feel dirty or not?
Not really. It didn't, because at the time, what I was doing is I'd approach a client. This is how advertorial works for anyone who's interested. I'd approach a client and say, hey, if you pay this amount of money, what we'll do is, we'll have a traditional ad, and then underneath we'll talk about your business. So I will write some script, I'll send it to you, you can add in what you want, and then it can go back and forward. So the advertorial that I was writing for small business, which I'm a firm believer in. I believe in small and medium business. And I felt that for a local paper, what we were doing was keeping the paper afloat, because we actually had some really good journalists working with us at the time. We were helping to keep the paper afloat while also reaching out to those small businesses that can't compete with a Harvey Norman, that couldn't compete with big business. So no, I didn't feel dirty in what I did. However, if I was writing advertorial like you see today, news.com.au is especially notorious for this. I'd absolutely feel dirty, especially because the advertorial that they're writing is advertorial for big business and big spin. And, the big business in this country needs its ass kicked, to be honest. So, I didn't feel dirty doing the small amount that I did for small business, but I would have felt dirty if I was also recruited into, what we see now. But I was there during the very initial inception of it. But we always knew what it would turn into too, right? So it'd be foolish if I'd turn around and say, I didn't know where this was going. We knew where it was going. Yeah, we knew where it was going to lead. Right. But yeah, that was company-wide that they started the advertorial thing. But yeah, messaging, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to penetrate through that spin, we hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Tommy? I think that's a pretty solid first episode there. Yep. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about today?
Continue on the messaging just before we end this thing. You've brought up communism a bit, and I've been reading Marx, who's sort of considered to be
communist,
the inventor of communism, and and so it seems like socialism and communism can be equatable, but communism as it's used as it was used by McCarthy, it was basically used as a bludgeon. Like communism as they were using it meant dictator.
Yes.
Right, because they were looking at Soviet Russia, they were looking at China, and they were like, oh yeah, these commies are bad because they don't like democracy or whatever. But communism in its ideal form is probably the most democratic way of governance, because it doesn't like a state, it doesn't like commodification, and it basically just goes, hey, you should just do stuff as individuals and work and for the sake of working, not for survival and all this other kind of stuff. So communism is good, but most of the people out there that use it in a derogatory way are using it incorrectly. They're using the McCarthy style sort of thing. So so Jordan Peterson will say, it's cultural Marxism, which is also another thing, which basically he's basically saying it's not cultural. What's the word? It's like pop. It'd be like pop communism or something. Is an equatable term for that.
You're 100% right. So it's like communism in its actual form as a proper political system has never actually been implemented, because every country that says that it's a communist country is a dictatorship, which is not a communist country. So North Korea, China, the Soviet Union back in the day, they were not communist societies, they were dictators. That's how it worked. The idea was that, the very basic principle of it is that everyone works towards a common good, and then the benefits of that common good are then equally divvied out amongst everyone. But in the example of Russia during the Soviet Union, what would happen is the people at the top of the party, the Communist Party, they got the mansions and they got the fancy cars, while the people that work below them starved to death, which is not a true communist society, because in a communist society, no one should be starving. Then they also, these dictators have sort of destroyed a lot of words that progressives could use just because of the connotations now. Family members have joked that, I'm their filthy socialist son. But and they do it in jest, my parents, and they're quite progressive people. When people use the term socialist in a negative way, Australia, our system as it works right now, is a capitalist society that funds socialism. There is no, we can absolutely live in a hybridized system where you can have, big business that is big business needs to be highly regulated big business that pays its workers a living wage that meets inflation. Those workers then pay into a tax system that then pays for social services like free Medicare, hospitals, education. As I often say to people when they go, oh, you filthy socialists are dirty, everything should be privatized, everything should be company run. I say, well, remember that next time you drop your kids off to public school, because that public school is socialist.
Yeah, public school, the road, buses, trams, hospitals, all those are in Australia at least created by governments.
A traineeship where you don't have to pay for your TAFE courses is socialism, and so you're right. Like, I would like to reclaim some of those words, Tommy, and maybe we'll be able to do that in the future. That's my fingers across there. At least, I don't think
I think
the
very
war
good
is
at tainting that kind of stuff, though. It's very unfortunate.
The war for a communist, like the word communist, I think has been truly lost, but I do believe that we can reclaim socialist and leftist, because people have to remember that discrimination in this sort of way towards progressives has been going on since the witch hunts. Rich people in power called those who wanted equality or progressiveness, they called them witches, and then it morphed into communist, and then it morphed into socialist, and now it's morphed into leftist. And so we have to be very, very careful and very aware of how people who don't have our best interests at heart are going to manipulate language to make people feel a certain way. So, that's an important thing. I think, it's a good point to bring up. And a good point to end
one of the things that always helps me out when I think about this is to not get bogged down in terminology, because again, that's very easy to be hijacked by malicious groups. So again, we have communism and socialism being hijacked by the right and made derogatory, but like you should really be concentrating on like the idea that those things represent in their truest form. And like socialism and communism basically want to flatten out hierarchies. So communists and anarchists and stuff like that. So if you want to believe in like leftism and progressivism, you basically want to remove as many hierarchical structures as you can. So whenever there's someone above you, that's not necessarily good. So business owners are always above the workers because they kind of own them in the way. There's no way for you to democratically oust your leader in a workplace. So there's this funny dichotomy in modern capitalism where we'll have governments that are democracies where we can vote our leaders, but then we'll just go into work and then just be a slave for a bit. And
well, you're meant to get compensated for your work, but we find that doesn't happen with.
Again, I just wanted to, I was being incorrect in a way, but like it was basically just to point out that there's a hierarchy. There's you, and there's the person that owns the workplace where you work that can fuck you off anytime they want, but you can't do anything to change the leadership structure. Even if they're a bad boss, even if there's a bad manager, you as a worker have no say in that hierarchy. Whereas democracy is like, you sort of elevate someone above you, but the idea is you can vote them out, so they're not technically above you in a way. You still have some level of control over them. So
the idea of
democracies are considered to be more progressive is because it's all about the flattening of the hierarchy. There's no dictator above you. There's someone that you can oust potentially or whatever. So that's the idea.
Absolutely. I think Winston Churchill said like democracy is a shit system, but it's the best of a bunch of shit systems. And he's right. Like, you always want to be able to walk into a society where you have the ability to represent yourself in an equal way, and that's important. But language is a tool of the right that they're very good at. Like let's give them credit where credit's due. They wield it like a fucking lightsaber. Like they are very, very good with language. And so that's also why I like to use the word progressive. Progressive is I feel like using the term progressive is taking away the bias that the right has been able to produce when you say a word like a socialist, or when you say you're left leaning. Well, I'm a progressive, and what that means is that I believe in equal representation for all, and that our society should start progressing towards a system, like Tommy said, where there aren't these massive hierarchical hierarchy structures.
Hierarchical structures.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Where we don't have those structures, where people have a little bit more control in their own destiny. That's why things like a universal basic income have me so excited, because it would allow people that, me personally, like I only work because I have to. If I didn't have to work, like in the current system that we have right now, I'm doing 38 hours a week. I'm now working with you to produce this show. I'm producing weird crap in Australia. I'm writing a book every year. I'm writing a comic book every year. And I'm doing that all under the and I'm not trying to say that to make out that, I look at Matthew, he's an amazing person. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, imagine what I could achieve if I didn't have to go to work.
Yeah, imagine if those 38 hours, instead of toiling for someone else, you were allowed to continue like either your other artistic projects or just like doing more advocacy on the ground for political movements, civil rights movements, all that kind of shit. Like we can't do that because part of our lives have to be spent working to live.
Yes.
To afford shelter, to afford food. And socialism is wants to remove that barrier from people, that need to toil, and make it so that when you work, you're working for you, essentially.
Yes. You're working
that's the ideal.
Working for the betterment of yourself, being the best you that you can be. And one thing that I've always wanted to do, and I've done in the past through volunteer work, I used to volunteer for the Rural Fire Service. I don't have the time anymore. I have to make a choice. Either I can try and affect a better society, or I can follow my artistic and, professional goals, or I can pay off my mortgage. I can't do everything. So something has to go. And unfortunately for me, I can't go out and volunteer on a Wednesday night because I'm working on writing on a Wednesday night, or the next book, or the next podcast, or, working with you to do this. And I also need downtime too. Like that's something that people forget too. Everyone needs a day off. Everyone does. And that from everything, everyone deserves to have that one day where they can sit on the couch and binge, 6 hours of The Simpsons. Everyone deserves that. And we need to live in a society where we don't have to make those.
Week or less. So
me
that.
too.
I think people need more than a day. They need a lot more.
When I was working, and this is one of my biggest regrets, is there was a point in my life where I was able to work 4 days a week and earn a comfortable living doing that. And just through, circumstances changing, I don't have that anymore. And my biggest regret is that I didn't utilize that time properly. Having 3 days off was one of the best times in my life. Honestly, it was. It made me a better worker, and I never felt run down. And now working, 5 days a week, which everyone's done. There's definitely this there's a gender out there with people who are like, I've had to work 5 days, I've had to suffer, you have to suffer too. Well, my personal position is that I've worked 5 days a week. I don't want the next generation to have to compromise on what they want to do with their lives. I would absolutely prefer it if they worked 4 or 3 days a week, and then the rest of their income was subsidized with the vast amount of wealth that we all collectively create. He's a dirty communist. Get him.
Additionally, it's like if you have that extra day, imagine how much easier it is to plan events with other people, like your friends and stuff.
Yep.
And to like go outside and spend money at bars, cafes, movies.
Yep.
All that be easier. And so economically, it's actually more beneficial because people can spend their money rather than just working and then slumping down and doing nothing because they're too tired to do anything.
Exactly. So, and that's where I find myself a lot of the time. It's a statistical fact that the working class spends more than what they earn. It's a statistical fact that the wealthy CEOs spend about 15% of what they earn. So one group is supporting the economy and our social endeavors like public schooling, transportation, healthcare. And there's a group of people who don't, and they're the ones who are in charge. And those people also own the media. And again, going back to the theme of today's episode, that's why messaging is so important. We need to know where this is coming from, and we need to be able to start cutting through it. And that's that's all I got for you today. I think I'm done for today. What are you? What about you, Tommy?
I mean, look, there's plenty we can talk about. Still, because I mean, like this has actually been a very packed week in terms of bad things that the Liberal Party and Scott Morrison has done. I guess one thing I want to say is that Jenny Morrison coming out, and like there are a lot of people like defending her and stuff, but I'm like she's trying to. In the interview, the thing that I had the most objection to was when she said, "Oh yeah, I have girls and I want them to grow up fierce, but you know, politeness is still a thing you should adhere to." And I just I cannot. It's just like, yo, are you actually a feminist or not? Like even second wave feminists would have been like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah,
you cannot be polite, because politeness is reinforcing current oppressive structures that tell women to be a certain way. And I think it's quite galling for her to basically say, to essentially insinuate that, hey, Grace Tame, you should have just been polite and smiled. Because I knew growing up not to tell a woman to just, hey, just you know, you look better with a smile, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so for her to say that is fucking incredible to me, and it's so like incredibly disingenuous. But you know, that's the current state of affairs.
She knows the spin she's doing. Like,
I think part of it is a tactic to, again, another culture war thing to drum up an attack against Grace Tame, so that we're talking about that instead of talking about Morrison being shit.
Yeah, the fact that they unearthed a picture of her with a bong, to essentially discredit her, ironically, has made, like, she's becoming a counterculture figure. And look, I mean, shit. I mean, I've seen more. Like, I live in Canberra, for fuck's sake. I've seen more bongs than anyone else. I've had bongs in my house. Like it's one of those silly fucking things where, you know, there are more weed smokers out there than there ever been before. And name one fucking kid in Australia who went to a party and didn't see a bong.
But also,
I think
like,
you'd be
you know,
really...
how many politicians are out there snorting coke or whatever else it is out there, or you know, just raping people, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think that they have much worse things that we could be pointing out in counter to just, oh, she had a bong. And it's like, so what?
Yeah,
grow up.
Do a random drug test of sitting MPs in Parliament right now, and then see what happens. One of the most interesting things that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic for me was when they were testing wastewater, when they were testing sewage. Cocaine use in Canberra went through the roof.
Yep.
You know,
makes sense.
Let's not pretend that our politicians aren't up to no good with their own vices. And again, you know, when it comes to drug use, I think a lot of it should just be regulated and legalized. Honestly,
I think there'd be better outcomes for sure.
Yeah, people aren't going to die from heroin-laced fentanyl if they're able to access regulated and legal things. You know, and that argument, like, hey, you know, no one should be doing drugs. Well, life can be really tough for people. That's why they do drugs. That's why people smoke weed. That's why people do what they do. And some people just want to party. You know, so yeah, but no, you're 100% right. Again, like the messaging coming from you just got to wonder what the scruples are of these people when they can betray, you know, their core beliefs in order to keep that spin going. I guess, you know, everyone finds their own way to sleep at night, I suppose.
Yeah. All I'll say, again, like I said, to wrap this up, like, okay, so Morrison got his little puff piece. Your 60 minutes. Where's the one on Albo?
Yeah, absolutely.
You cowards.
Yeah.
The people want to know. Apparently no one knows who the fuck Albanese is. Thanks for that, media. How about you tell us if that is a problem that you were picking up? Why did you just tell us, rather than perpetuating that idea that no one knows him? Just you can just tell us. You can do that. That is a job that is yours.
Yeah, come on, Carl Stefanovic. Go have a chat with Albo. Ask
Yeah, see
Albo
what
to
he's
bust out
cooking
his
and
ukulele.
playing on a guitar or some
does,
shit. I don't know.
does he have a violin? I want to know. Does he play saxophone? That'd be fun.
Oh, that'd
I'd
be
like to
so
see
good.
Albo playing some
Imagine
sax.
that. Like, yeah, the puff
Yeah.
piece on Albo, and he's got a saxophone and sunglasses.
Yeah,
Compared to
puts
Morrison
on
and his fucking
cool hat,
ukulele,
yeah.
that'd be that. Yeah, that's
Yep.
it.
And then at the end of the segment, Albo does a tips fedora. You know, that would be lovely. Like, let's see that. Yeah, look,
so good.
Even in the respect, like, Nine is obviously conservative. They have been for some time. If like just do a piece and rubbish them into the ground, but at least like show, like, if you're at least interviewing both, then it doesn't look like you're terribly biased. And I mean, yeah, I could say so much about that interview. I won't, but you're right, Tommy. Like, if Albo is a non-entity, journalists, go find him. Tell us who this man is.
Dude, I mean, look, he's not hard to find. He's on News Breakfast like almost every day.
Yeah.
He's always doing interviews and shit. Like, you can ask him these questions. You can just do the piece. I just want to see him chilling out at home, making a sausage sandwich or some shit. I don't know what he does, but I want to know. Want to know these things.
Let's find
and
out.
That's the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the annoying thing about the Morrison interview, is that it was just a bunch of information we already knew. Like, yeah, this guy liked curries. Yeah, we knew that already. Who fucking cares? Let's see him do something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
like I would love, the playbook has essentially been set in stone by people like Bob Hawke. But the reason, like, the act of going to a pub and drinking a beer is fucking stupid. Bob Hawke was often filmed drinking a beer because the dude was a fucking champion drinker. Literally, he was. He held a world record for drinking.
It was when the camera was on Hawke, he wasn't faking it for the, like, he's not pulling a Morrison and doing an optics. That was just him. Yeah,
he loved drinking beer. That was his thing, you know. And look, honestly, if Morrison playing the ukulele is his thing, I'm down with that. But like Tommy said, let's find out what Albo's thing is. Let's find it out. Let's do those interviews.
Saxophone would be so good.
You know,
let's go.
Fingers crossed. Well, yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's a wrap for this week. Thank
Matt,
you for having me, Tommy.
Why don't you plug your stuff?
Yes, I should.
Get out of here.
So if you want to check out some of my work at the moment, you can find us every week on, well, whatever service you use to grab your podcasts on. Myself and my wife, Holly Soul, we produce the Weird Crap in Australia podcast every week, talking about strange Australian history, some stuff you definitely don't know about, and we throw in some alien serial killers and monsters into the mix every now and again to keep things interesting. We have also just finished a series on Agro's Cartoon Connection, which seemed to go down really well. So, you know, we cover all sorts of Australian history through that. And I also have 2 books out at the moment, Weird Crap in Australia, Volume 1 and 2, co-written by myself and Holly Soul. And I have my first graphic novel out in comic book stores across Australia, Killaroo, Semper Fidelius, which is written by me and drawn by my great mate Ignacio. So go to your local comic book store. Tommy's grabbing his off the shelf right now.
That's this one.
It's a beautiful book. If you want to see what it would be like if an American military platoon dropped into the middle of the Australian bush and had their absolute asses handed to them by a mutant kangaroo, then this is the book for you. And I'm about to start draft 2 of the sequel. It is a planned trilogy as well. So if you dig continuity, you're going to dig this. So yeah, that's all my work at the moment. And yeah, we've got Weird Crap in Australia Volume 3 coming out. Oh, and actually one quick thing I'll say too, on the 12th of March, we'll be doing a book signing at Impact Comics at 16 Gramina Place in the ACT. So if you're a Weird Crap fan and you want to get an autograph, please head there. From 12 p.m. on the 12th of March, 12/12, can't forget it, at Impact Comics, Gramina Place in Canberra.
Nice. Good stuff.
That's my pluggage.
That's been Matt.
And you can find us on all the social media too. Sorry.
Yeah.
I always forget that bit. Weird Crap in Australia on Facebook, Weird Crap in Oz on Twitter, and same for Instagram too.
Yep, nice. Okay, so that has been the Modern Meltdown episode 1. I have been your host, Tommy Din. That was Matthew Soul. I have nothing to plug. because I'm ashamed of everything else I do. So just check out Matt's stuff. Mostly, I'm trying to just liberate Matt. This whole project for me is mostly just trying to liberate Matt from toiling. So that would be good, because I would like to do this more often. I think it'd be cooler to do this like on a more regular basis to cut down like all the shit that we missed from this week. But
it would be it'd be lovely to do like 3-4 shows a week, because there's enough content out there that we could nearly do it daily. You could nearly daily do a daily show. So there needs to be more voices like this in Australia, and I love that sentiment that we should be doing this more often.
Yeah, I want to do. I would like it to be a daily thing, and we can also like. I think if we did a daily, there'd be more downtime in between the episodes, and we can do more fun stuff like reacting to reactionaries or right wingers or protesters being idiots and making fun of them, and that would be good. But
great.
Thank you for watching or listening or however you're ingesting this, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
See you next time, folks. Okay, are we still broadcasting?